Good morning, Stampers. Welcome to Learning with Friends. I am Pat Fairless from Fairless Stampin Flair, and today I have a technique I'm going to share with you that I learned from my good friend and fellow demonstrator, Kathy Ondas from Simply Cards by Kathy. You may remember, if you've been watching for a while, that Kathy and I collaborated for almost a year on something we called Connect to Create. And each week we brought a different video and we took turns each week until we learned that maybe we were breaking some YouTube rules. So we had to discontinue our collaboration, but we are the best of friends. And I first saw her do this a couple months ago, maybe, and it's called Bokeh. And I thought, this looks like fun. So I talked to her and figured out how to do it. And I'm going to share it with you today. So let's go ahead and turn my camera down. I hope my lighting is okay. I had to dismantle everything for a class last week, and setting it back up today, I couldn't seem to get the lighting very good. I feel like I have a lot of shadows. So, and if you see some special highlights in my hair, it's not highlights, it's white paint that I can't get out. I'm having some work done at my house and they're starting in a couple weeks. And I'm getting some new flooring put in. And so I'm bound and determined to get some closets painted before they get here. So I've been doing a lot of closet painting. And as you might guess, when you're painting closet, there's shelves and you stick your head under the shelf and the bottom of the shelf is painted and you bring your head up and you have white paint in your hair. So I've done my best to get it out, but I still see some in there. So I'm just calling it new highlights. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started today. Enough chit chat. I'm going to turn my camera down. And like I said, this is called Bokeh Technique. And some of the supplies that we need are a neutral cardstock. And by neutral, I mean probably white or very vanilla. I've used white today on all my samples. And I do have 4 different samples, 2 with the true Bokeh technique, and then 1 with a little bit of Bokeh with a twist. I'm not even sure it qualifies as Bokeh, but we'll talk about that. You also need some scrap paper, or a window sheet works also, to create some circle masks. You can use any ink colors of your choice. We need some blending brushes and a sponge dauber and white craft ink. So I am not going to make the masks for you today, but let me show you. I've made several. If you're not familiar with Bokeh, the word Bokeh comes from the Japanese word boke, which means blur or haze. And the Bokeh technique is really more of a photographic effect, and it is something that it gives somewhat hazy dots. So by blurry or hazy, I thought I started with the deckled circle dies, and I kind of liked that because the deckled circle dies are uneven around the edges, so that automatically gives you somewhat of a blurry edge, right? And I used the 3 smallest, and I created this mask just from regular copy paper. And let me put this on the back, maybe of a card, you can probably see it better. I put 3 different sizes on one mask. You can certainly do that. You could take a scrap paper and have 1 for each size, whatever works easiest for you. You just want to have some variation in size. So I just laid the 3 smallest dies on my Stampin' Cut and Emboss in this copy paper, and I made this mask. I also did the same thing using a window sheet, and this is probably a little hard to see. I do like using window sheets for masks because you can clean them off and reuse them. But if you use punches, because you certainly could use different size punches to create this, I would not recommend punching a window sheet. I tried and it jammed up my punch. The punch does not like to really punch a window sheet. I think it's a little too thick or something. And this is one of those sheets that just comes in our photopolymer stamps sets that the stamps are initially all stuck to. And I always save those because they truly are window sheets, and it saves me from purchasing window sheets. I use these on cards and everything. So I hope you save yours too. But we're going to use this one for the first card. And then you can also, I also made a mask using the stylish shape dies, which would give a clean edge. And I also used that for some cards. So again, I just ran this through my Stampin' Cut and Emboss to make those. It's no big deal. And I don't think I need to show you how to do that. Again, I used on the stylish shaped ones, I used the 3 smallest because that gave me a nice variety of size. You don't want the circles too big. You want to see that they're circles. So let's go ahead, and the first step in making our card is to add color on the background. And I mentioned you can use any colors you want. So I'm going to use, for the one I'm going to show you, I'm going to kind of make it like a sky. So I've got Balmy Blue, Highland Heather, Azure Afternoon, and Blueberry Bushel. So, and we're just going to cover our sheet of cardstock here. I have basic white, like I said. I have not tried this on colored cardstock. I guess you could probably try it. I don't know why it wouldn't work, other than as you blend your colors on, you're going to get obviously different colors, but it might be fun to try, right? So let's go ahead and ink this up, and I brush off a little bit. The blending keeps it nice and I didn't want it too dark for my card, so I'm just adding some spots of Blueberry Bushel here and there. And there's no rhyme or reason to this. Add the color however you like. And we'll just add one at a time. Go to Azure Afternoon next. Some of these ink pads are a little wetter than others, so I have to test on my sheet. And I suggest you also test on your background. You can kind of blend them together if you want. And I do tend, with all my technique sheets, I think I've mentioned this before, I do tend to start out with basically a 1/4 sheet of cardstock, so 5.5 by 4 1/4, because I can always cut it down to whatever size I want. And a lot of times I will use the edges that I trim off to decorate the inside of my card, or depending on how many strips I have left, maybe to even add some stripes or strips onto the envelope just to decorate it. So now we're going to come in with some Highland Heather. Add a little, I just wanted a little bit of different color in here instead of all blues, to have a little bit of variation. Reason being, it just adds a little bit more punch to it. And since I'm doing a sky, I kind of like purples and pinks in a sky. So, and again, you can choose any colors that you like. And I've had cards made with several different colors. So we will show you those. Stick around to the end and I'll make sure you see them all. I have 4 different cards today. So that's my Highland Heather. And the last one I'm going to use is Balmy Blue. And we'll just fill in any white spots I have left here. The other reason I like to use a little bit larger piece than what I'm going to end up with, as you can see as I blend, sometimes the edges turn dark, and then I can always trim that off if I don't like it. Sometimes it kind of adds a little something, and it's nice to have that little bit darker edge, but other times I prefer not to have it. So this gives me the option of just trimming off the edges a little bit if I just make it larger. And I find I always have lots of use for scraps. So, okay, now we want to make sure this is dry. So I'm just going to hit it quickly on low with my heat tool, just to make sure it's dry. It's not critical, but it just makes it easier to work with. So that feels pretty good. Now we're going to start doing the bokeh. And here's where we need the mask. And I'm going to go ahead and use my window sheet mask, just because that way I can clean it off and reuse it later. And to do this, we want to have craft ink, which is a pigment ink. And I'm using white. We do sell this ink. It now comes uninked with a refill. And so when you get it, you have to ink your pad with your refill first. It will come dry. I found a sponge dauber seemed to work best here to add my dots. And we're just going to kind of, I have 3 different sizes, and we're just going to kind of move this around. So I'm going to pick up some white and kind of daub it in the edges, swirling it a little bit to just add the white. Probably a little hard for you to see. I will pick it up. All we're really kind of doing is trying to blur it a little bit. So let's go ahead and add a smaller one. I did find that for this particular method, oops, that is one thing about the window sheet. You got to make sure you hold it onto it good. Sometimes it looks nice to overlap them just a little bit. We're just kind of making random dots. And with the sponge dauber, you can get into the edges pretty good. So let's add a nice big one down here. And we're just going to cover this whole sheet with these white dots. And they're not really white because you can still see the color through. Dabbing sometimes added a little more ink than rubbing. But I liked the rubbing because it kind of softened it, I felt, a little bit. So let's go ahead and just continue filling this in. Super easy. Fairly quick. You just gotta color in your dots with your white ink. And again, the whole technique is meant to be blurry. So it's kind of what we're doing here is adding these dots that are semi-transparent, I would call them. And they add some interest and it makes really pretty backgrounds. Let's just go ahead and do this half one up here on the edge. And let's pick it up and see where I should add one. I think I need something right about here. Now this craft ink will take a bit of time to dry. You can let it dry naturally, or you can dry it with your heat tool. This is a slower drying ink. Let's see, how about right about there? You don't want it 100% covered with dots. You do want some undotted space, we'll call it. And think maybe I ran over here. Okay, let's lift it up. I'm going to tip this around. I think if I tip it, you can see a little bit better. I think I need something just up here, maybe on the edge. So let's just go ahead and overlap something between these two, maybe. Just a little. All right, where should it be up here? I think I want to overlap it. The overlap to me adds a little bit of interest with this technique because bubbles kind of tend to merge, right? Okay, I like that. We've got some good open spaces, so it doesn't look like the whole thing's covered, but they're pretty random. I hope you can see it. It is much more visible in person, so I encourage you to play with it. And just have some fun experimenting with different colors. But that is basically the bokeh technique. So let me bring in my card that I used with this background. And for this particular card, I used the Regal Reindeer stamp set with this cute little guy up here and the trees. And here's my card. Isn't that background soft and pretty? It makes a pretty background and a pretty sky, I thought. The other unique thing a little bit about this card is I stamped the trees in Parakeet Party, and then I just took a blender pen, and after I stamped it, I just kind of rubbed it with the blender pen to kind of bring some color and blend the branches a little bit and bring some color throughout. It doesn't add a lot of color, but it just kind of makes the trees look less liney, I guess I'd call it. It blends in the branches a little bit. And I colored the little bunny down here and the reindeer the same way. I stamped these in Pebble Path, and then where you can see the shading areas, I just took my blender pen and I pulled that color to smear it a little bit, I guess is about the best way I can call it. And then his bridle and his blanket were colored with balmy blue and Highland Heather. So I thought that made a pretty card, peace on earth. It looks peaceful, doesn't it? We got two friends here looking at each other. It just looked real peaceful. Now for the inside, I just added a sentiment and framed it. I'll be real honest, I did that because the first time I stamped it directly on there, I stamped it crooked and it was driving me nuts. So I just decided to cover it up and put a little frame around it. If I had it straight, I wouldn't have done that. And here's my envelope. So that is my first card made with this particular background of the Bokeh technique. The second card, I used the same technique with the Whisper, or the Whisper White Craft ink. And for this one, rather than the deckled circles, I used the stylish shapes. And if you look carefully, I'll bring this one we just did and bring these up close. I think you can see the lines on this one, the circles, on the lines around the circles are crisper and cleaner than the ones on here that are done with the deckled circles, which is why I kind of liked deckled circles since it's supposed to be a blurry, hazy dot. So, but this is pretty too. The colors I used on this one were Cajun Craze, Old Olive, Crushed Curry, and Pumpkin Pie. And this set is a sneak peek, actually, of a new set coming on November 7th as an online exclusive called Garden Meadow. A really fun set with lots of fun dies, to make different things. So I used the fence and a couple of the flowers. I did want to keep it kind of clean and simple because you really, when you make a pretty background like this, right, you don't want to cover it all up. So those are my 2 cards that I made with that technique. Now, I did experiment with what I'm calling an alternative bokeh. And I'm going to show you how I did that. I again started with a piece of cardstock, Whisper White. And in this case, I just blended real red and garden green. And you can probably guess this is also a Christmas card. And I decided you didn't need to see the blending again, but instead of using craft ink, Whisper White craft ink, on this card, I embossed the circles, which is probably not true bokeh, but the dots inspired me, and I just wanted to try the dots. So we're going to use this one. I am going to use this mask this time. And I am just going to, instead of white craft ink, I am going to use Versamark. Now here, this is dry, but I do want to rub it with my embossing buddy first, so it doesn't stick. Although if it's snowy, I guess it doesn't matter. But I'm going to use Versamark and a sponge dauber again. Now this is a little more difficult to see, so I may have to do this kind of in sections because it's pretty hard to see the Versamark. And I did not put down a heavy amount of Versamark because I do want my embossing to be somewhat transparent. I don't want it to be a solid embossed dot. I want it to be light so that I can still sort of see through it. And I'm kind of just following up on keeping with my diagonals here. Is where I'm laying on my Versamark. It does kind of work better to do one at a time because you can see it a little bit better. I'm just going to use the little one up here. And I'm going to pick this up so if I can see where they are. I'm going to go ahead and put some embossing powder on here, and I'm going to use gold. And here was kind of my trick so that I didn't get too much on. I have gold embossing powder. And instead of covering this all laying flat, I held it at an angle and I just kind of poured it over it so it would catch it as it went down over it. And I didn't care if I had a real solid image. In fact, if I had too much, like this one's probably got a little more than I want, I just kind of took my finger and knocked some of it off. Because like I said, this bokeh is supposed to be blurry and look like a haze. So that's why I just kind of, wherever I thought I maybe had a little too much, I just sort of rubbed my finger and knocked some off. Now I could add more in here. I'm just going to show you this and then I'll show you the completed card. So we'll just quickly emboss this for a minute here. Let me get my ink out of the way. Sorry about the noise. I know it quiets down after a minute. Take a minute to heat up. embossing with metallic embossing powder is my favorite because it's like just so much fun to watch it change. It's easy to see, and it's kind of like a little miracle almost. You can see it change to gold before your eyes, or silver, or whatever color you choose. But I love the metallics. Okay. So let me bring this in a little closer. And you can see that I don't have solid circles here. I just have kind of semi-transparent circles. Now I'd probably add another little one down in here just to kind of balance this out a little bit. But let me show you the card that I made. And you can see my circles. And this was made with the Magical Meadow stamp set. And I use these snowflakes up here are from it's a snowflake assortment from the Fall Mini. They have gold, copper, and white snowflakes in it in 3 different sizes. And I thought they added a little bit more gold, just added a gold bow. And this image is from this Magical Meadow stamp set, which is this one right here. This is also from the Fall Mini catalog. And there's dies, several dies. So that's my alternative Bokeh technique, I'm calling it. And I also made one in silver here. This is little Bo the Bunny, and he is from Fluffiest Friends. Fluffiest Friends is also a sneak peek of a stamp set that is available November 7th as an online exclusive. All this week on my blog, I am featuring this stamp set. So if you want to see more cards made with these cute little guys, go to fairlessstampinflair.com and you can see my posts made with these cards. This card here in particular will be on there tomorrow and Friday. And there is a tutorial with step-by-step directions. This is actually a buckle fun fold. And so this opens like this. And the directions are on there how to make this buckle fun fold. Some of you probably are familiar with the Creative 8 Retreat. And that was one of the tutorials or challenges. I think it was one of the challenges in the pre-retreat. So that is these 2 alternative Bokeh cards. And let me go ahead and bring in this out of here. And we'll just lay them all on here. So we get them all for one last time to see them. Kind of fun, aren't they? I don't know. Do you like the alternative? Or do you think sticking with the traditional Bokeh is the way to go? I'd love to hear your comments. And which is your favorite? Boy, it's hard to get cards laying right so they look good on screen. But there you go. There are my 4 cards for today for this Bokeh technique. So I'm going to bring my camera back here. And we will wrap this up. I hope you liked that. And hope you learned something new. It's kind of a fun technique, pretty quick and easy, and it does make beautiful backgrounds, which means you don't have to do a lot more work to make a pretty card once you have a beautiful background, right? The last Bo the Bunny card is a bit over the top with the fun fold and the technique, but he's fun, and he insisted that because he's kind of tiny, he wanted to be on a over-the-top card. So again, you can find the tutorial for that one tomorrow on my fairlessstampinflair.com blog, and the tutorials are always there on all my cards, and they're free. So feel free to download them. I'd love to see your comments. If you like today's video, will you give me a thumbs up? If you haven't already subscribed, I'd love to have you subscribe. If you'd like to get more ideas and tech tips and so on, and stay up to date on what's going on at Stampin' Up! With specials coming up. Then on my blog, there's an easy way to sign up for my newsletter, which comes out every 2 weeks. And you'll get more tips, ideas, and tutorials. So I'd love to have you sign up for that too. So I hope you have a great rest of your week. And I think it's now time for me to go back to my painting projects and add some more highlights to my hair. Have a great day. Bye-bye.